They called her too soft to survive, until she became the reason the strongest wolf chose to live. The autumn rain fell cold and relentless over the Thornridge Pack territory, turning the ground to mud and the world to gray. Elena stood at the kitchen window of the pack house, watching the others train in the downpour, watching them move with grace and power she would never possess, watching the life she would never be part of unfold without her. She was 23 and invisible. Not because she was quiet, though she was, not because she lacked skill, though her wolf was weak and her shifting painful, but because her body didn't fit the mold of what a she-wolf should be. She was soft where others were lean, rounded where they were angular. Her curves were generous, her frame substantial, and in a culture that worshipped speed and strength and the sleek, deadly beauty of predators, she was considered fundamentally defective. Fat, they called her, useless, a waste of pack resources. The rejection had come 3 days ago, public and humiliating as all rejections were. Marcus, her fated mate, had stood before the entire pack during the full moon gathering and spoken the words that severed their bond. He hadn't been cruel about it, which somehow made it worse. He had been matter-of-fact, practical, as if rejecting her was simply common sense. I, Marcus of the Thornridge Pack, reject you, Elena, as my mate. You do not meet the physical standards required of an alpha's mate. This bond serves neither of us. The pack had murmured agreement. Her own parents had nodded, resigned. No one had defended her. No one had questioned whether physical appearance should matter more than character, loyalty, compassion. In their world, it did. It always had. The bond had snapped, leaving a hollow ache in her chest that hadn't faded. Her wolf had retreated so deep inside her that Elna could barely feel her anymore, just a faint whisper of presence, a ghost of what should have been. She turned from the window, focusing on the only thing that still brought her comfort, the kitchen. Here, at least, she had value. She could cook, could bake, could create food that made people smile even if they wouldn't look at her twice otherwise. It was something. It had to be enough. Tonight she was preparing the pack dinner, roasting venison and root vegetables, baking fresh bread, making the berry tarts that everyone loved, even if they never thanked her directly. The work was familiar, soothing, requiring just enough attention to keep her from thinking too hard about her shattered future. She was pulling the bread from the oven when she heard it, a sound outside, barely audible over the rain, a whimper, pained, desperate. Elena froze, her heart clenching. She knew that sound, had made it herself when the rejection bond snapped, the sound of something dying. She set down the bread and moved to the back door, the one that led to the forest edge where the pack dumped scraps and waste. The rain had intensified, coming down in sheets, but through the downpour she could see movement near the compost heap. An animal, large, dark, collapsed in the mud. Elena grabbed her cloak and stepped into the rain without thinking, without considering her safety or the rules about approaching strange animals. She just moved, drawn by that sound of suffering, unable to ignore it. As she got closer, her breath caught. A wolf, massive even lying down, with fur so black it seemed to absorb light. But he was starving, his ribs visible beneath the matted coat, his breathing shallow and labored. Blood matted the fur on his side. Injuries. Recent. His eyes opened as she approached, gold, burning, filled with pain and wariness and something else, intelligence, deep and ancient and unmistakably aware. This was no ordinary wolf. This was a shifter. An alpha, she thought, though she didn't know how she knew. Something about the power that radiated from him even dying in the mud. "Hey," she whispered, kneeling beside him despite the rain soaking through her dress. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The wolf's lip curled, showing teeth. A warning, but weak, half-hearted. Elena slowly extended her hand, letting him catch her scent. I know, I'm a stranger, and you're hurt, but I can help, if you'll let me. The wolf stared at her for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he lowered his head. Not submission, permission. Elena's hands shook as she examined the wounds, deep gashes across his ribs and shoulder, as if something with massive claws had tried to tear him apart. The blood flow had slowed, but not stopped. Without treatment, he would die here, alone, in the rain and mud. Can you shift? She asked quietly. It would be easier to treat you in human form. The wolf's eyes closed, a negative. He was too weak or too wounded. Shifting took energy he didn't have. Okay. Elena made a decision, the kind of reckless choice she never made, the kind that would get her in trouble. Stay here. Don't die. I'm going to help you. She ran back to the kitchen, her mind racing. She couldn't bring him inside. The pack would kill him, ask questions later. Rogues weren't tolerated. Wounded strange alphas even less so. But she couldn't leave him to die either. She grabbed supplies, clean cloths, her mother's healing salves that she'd learned to make, the leftover venison from dinner, still warm, a thick blanket from her room. Her hands moved with purpose, gathering everything she could carry. When she returned, the wolf was still there, still breathing, his golden eyes tracking her movements with what might have been hope or might have been delirium. This is going to hurt, she warned, kneeling beside him again. But I need to clean the wounds before they get infected. She worked quickly, using the rain to rinse away blood and dirt, then applying the salve with gentle hands. The wolf flinched but didn't pull away, didn't snap at her despite the obvious pain. He simply endured, his eyes never leaving her face. When the wounds were bandaged as well as she could manage, Elena unwrapped the venison. You need to eat. Build your strength. I know it's not fresh kill, but it's good meat. I cooked it myself. She tore the venison into smaller pieces and held one out. The wolf hesitated, then took it from her hand with surprising gentleness, his teeth never touching her skin. He ate slowly, methodically, as if forcing himself to chew when his body wanted to gulp it down. Elena fed him piece by piece, talking softly the whole time. I don't know what happened to you, who hurt you, but you're safe now, or as safe as I can make you. The pack won't find you here. They don't come to the waste heap, they don't see me either, so we have that in common. The wolf finished the meat and looked at her with those impossibly intelligent eyes. Then he did something that made her heart stop. He shifted. Not completely. He didn't have the strength, but enough that she could see the man beneath the wolf. Strong features, sharp jawline, black hair matted with rain and blood, and those eyes, still golden, still burning, now looking at her with unmistakable gratitude. Thank you, he rasped, his voice rough from disuse or injury. You saved me. Who are you? Elena whispered. He smiled, bitter and broken. No one anymore. A king who lost his kingdom. A wolf who's been running so long he forgot why. You're hurt. You need real shelter. Medical attention. Can't. His eyes were already closing, exhaustion pulling him under. They're hunting me. Can't. Put you in danger. Then I'll come back, Elena said firmly. Every day, I'll bring food and medicine and you'll heal. And then you can tell me why a king is dying in my pack's garbage heap. Why? The word was barely a whisper. Why help me? Elena looked at the man who had thanked her, who had called her his savior when her own pack called her worthless. Because someone should. Because you're suffering and I can help. Isn't that enough? His hand moved, slow and shaking, until it touched hers. His skin was cold, but his grip was firm. What's your name? Elena. Elena. He said it like a prayer, like something sacred. I'm Kieran, and I owe you my life. You don't owe me anything, she said softly. Just survive. That's all I ask. His eyes closed fully, his breathing evening out into something that might have been sleep or might have been unconsciousness. Elena covered him with the blanket, tucking it around his massive frame as best she could. Then she returned to the pack house, her dress soaked and muddy, her hands still shaking. She had just saved a dying alpha, a king in exile, a stranger who looked at her like she mattered. And she had no idea that this single act of compassion was about to change everything. Elena returned to the waste heap before dawn, moving through the pre-morning darkness with a basket of fresh bread, leftover stew, and more medical supplies stolen from the pack clinic. Kieran was exactly where she'd left him, still in his shifted form, the blanket wrapped around his massive wolf body. But his breathing was stronger, steadier. The wounds she had bandaged showed no signs of infection, the edges already beginning to knit together with the supernatural healing of their kind. He woke when she approached, those golden eyes opening with immediate alertness despite his weakened state. The wariness was still there, the instinctive distrust of a predator who had been hunted, but beneath it she saw recognition, relief. "You came back," he said, and there was wonder in his rough voice, as if he had genuinely doubted she would. "I said I would." Elena knelt in the mud without hesitation, setting down her basket. "How do you feel?" "Like I was torn apart and barely put back together." He shifted slightly, wincing. "But better than yesterday. Your medicine." "It's good. Better than it should be for simple pack healing salves." "My mother was a healer before she—" Elena trailed off, old pain flickering across her face. "She taught me. I've been improving the recipes, adding things. The pack doesn't notice." "They don't notice a lot of things, do they?" Kieran's eyes tracked her face, reading things she didn't say, including you. Elena's hand stilled on the basket. "You don't know anything about me. I know your pack. I can smell it on you, thorn ridge markers all over you, but you come to the waste heap alone before dawn to help a rogue. That tells me plenty." "You're not a rogue." She unwrapped the bread, tearing off pieces. "You said you were a king." "Was." The word was bitter. Past tense. I lost that right when I lost my throne. "What happened?" Kieran was quiet for a long moment, his golden eyes distant. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of old grief. "I had a brother, younger, ambitious. He wanted power I wouldn't give him. So he poisoned the pack against me, literally and figuratively, made them believe I was weak, that my mercy made me unfit to rule." "Mercy isn't weakness," Elena said quietly, offering him bread. He took it, his movements still careful, still pained. "Try telling that to wolves raised on conquest and dominance. They chose him, exiled me. And when I wouldn't go quietly, when I tried to fight for what was mine, he sent his best warriors after me." He gestured to his wounds. "Hence this. They tried to kill you. They succeeded mostly, would have finished the job if you hadn't found me." Elena unpacked the stew, still warm from the pack's breakfast preparation. She had taken it before anyone noticed, a skill she had perfected over years of being invisible. "How long have you been running?" 3 months, maybe 4. Time blurs when you're just trying to survive." Kieran ate the bread slowly, savoring it in a way that suggested he hadn't tasted real food in far too long. "I've been moving south, trying to get far enough away that his reach wouldn't follow. But the wounds slowed me down. And then the rain came and I just couldn't run anymore." "So you collapsed in our garbage heap." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Not my finest moment, though finding you here might have been the first stroke of luck I've had in months." Elena ladled stew into a wooden bowl, handing it to him. Their fingers brushed in the exchange, and she felt it. A spark, a recognition that went beyond gratitude or circumstance. Something that made her breath catch and her heart race in a way that had nothing to do with fear. Kieran felt it too. She saw his eyes widen slightly, saw him pull back as if burned. "You're mated," he said flatly, and it wasn't a question. He could smell it on her, or smell the remnants of it. The broken bond. "I was." Elena looked away. 3 days ago, he rejected me. The silence that followed was heavy, loaded with understanding that only someone who had been cast aside could truly grasp. "Why?" Kieran's voice was gentle, but insistent. Elena laughed, and it was a broken sound. "Because I'm fat. Because I don't look like what a she-wolf should look like. Because my body is soft and generous, instead of lean and deadly. Because in a world that values strength and speed above everything else, I'm considered fundamentally defective. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." The words came out sharp, angry. "And I've heard a lot of stupid things." She looked up, startled. "You don't even know me. I know you saved a dying stranger without asking for anything in return. I know you risked pack punishment to bring me food and medicine. I know your hands are gentle and skilled, and you talk to wounded animals like they're worth your time." His golden eyes burned into hers. "I know that, in the few hours I've known you, you've shown more courage and compassion than most warriors I've commanded. So yes, rejecting you because of how you look is objectively stupid." Elena's throat tightened. No one had ever said anything like that to her. No one had ever looked at her the way Kieran was looking at her now, like she was valuable, important, worth defending. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me for stating facts." He finished the stew, his movements growing stronger with each bite of real food. "This is incredible, by the way. This food. You made it?" "I cook for the pack. It's the one thing I'm good at." "The one thing you're good at," Kieran repeated slowly, "is creating something this delicious. Elena, this is restaurant quality. Better. This is the kind of food pack leaders would fight wars to secure for their kitchens." She felt heat rise to her cheeks. "It's just stew." "It's art. Don't diminish yourself." He set down the empty bowl, his expression serious. "Your pack is full of fools if they can't see what they have in you." Elena wanted to argue, to deflect, but the sincerity in his eyes stopped her. He meant it. Every word. "You need to shift back," she said instead, focusing on practical matters. "The wolf form helps you heal faster, but those wounds need to be checked properly. And I brought fresh bandages." Kieran hesitated. "I'm not wearing much under this fur." Despite everything, Elena smiled. "I've seen naked men before. We're shifters. Modesty isn't exactly our strong suit." "Fair point." He closed his eyes, and she watched as his form rippled and changed. The shift was slow, labored, revealing just how weak he still was. But eventually the wolf gave way to the man, and Elena had to force herself not to stare. He was magnificent. Even injured and starving, even with scars crisscrossing his torso and the fresh wounds standing out angry and red against his pale skin, he was beautiful in the way alphas were, all lean muscle and controlled power and dangerous grace. But it was his face that caught her. Strong features, yes, but also kind eyes. Laugh lines around his mouth despite his current circumstances. The face of a man who had smiled often before the world broke him. "You're staring," he said, but there was no accusation in it, just gentle amusement. "Sorry." Elena busied herself with the medical supplies, trying to ignore the way her heart raced. "Lie down. Let me check the wounds." He obeyed, stretching out on the blanket with a pained grunt. Up close she could see just how bad the damage was. 4 parallel gashes across his ribs, deep enough that she could see muscle and possibly bone beneath the healing flesh. Smaller cuts on his shoulders and arms. Bruises that had faded from black to green and yellow, marking his entire torso like a violent painting. "This should have killed you," she murmured, carefully cleaning the wounds with fresh water and antiseptic. "Almost did. Would have if I were fully human." Kieran watched her work, his golden eyes tracking every movement of her hands. "Alpha healing is the only reason I'm still breathing. That and finding you." Elena applied fresh salve, her touch as gentle as possible, despite knowing it had to hurt. "How long until you're healed enough to travel?" "A week, maybe 2 if I have food and shelter and rest." He was quiet for a moment. "Why do you ask?" "Because your brother's warriors are still looking for you. And this pack isn't safe. If they find you here—" She didn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. "They'll kill me." Kieran's jaw tightened. "And probably punish you for helping me." "Probably." "Then stop coming. Stop risking yourself. I can survive on my own once I'm stronger." "No." Elena wrapped fresh bandages around his torso, her hands steady despite the tremor in her voice. "I'm not abandoning you. Not when you're healing. Not when you need help." "Why?" The question was raw, desperate. "Why do you care what happens to me?" Elena met his eyes, those impossible golden eyes that had looked at her with more kindness in 2 days than her own pack had shown in 23 years. "Because someone should care," she said simply. "And right now, I'm the only one who does, so I'll keep coming. I'll keep bringing food and medicine. And you'll heal. And when you're strong enough, you'll leave and find somewhere safe. Somewhere far from brothers who betray and packs who reject, and people who can't see worth when it's right in front of them." Kieran stared at her, something breaking in his expression. "You're extraordinary. Do you know that?" "I'm ordinary," Elena corrected, finishing the bandaging. "Painfully, obviously ordinary." "You're wrong." His hand caught hers, his grip warm and firm. "But I'm going to enjoy proving that to you. Every day you come here, every act of kindness you show. I'm going to make you see what I see." "And what do you see?" Kieran smiled, and it transformed his face. Made him look younger, hopeful, someone worth fighting for. The pattern continued for 7 days. Elena would rise before dawn, prepare the pack's breakfast, steal portions for Kieran, and slip out to the waste heap before anyone noticed. She brought him food, medicine, clean clothes she'd taken from donations meant for rogues passing through their territory. She checked his wounds, changed his bandages, and sat with him while he ate, talking about everything and nothing. Kieran healed with astonishing speed. By the 3rd day, he could shift without pain. By the 5th, he was walking the perimeter of the clearing, rebuilding strength and testing his limits. By the 7th day, the wounds had closed completely, leaving only pale scars that would fade with time. But he didn't leave. Didn't talk about leaving. They talked instead about other things. He told her about his kingdom, a territory far to the north where winter lasted 8 months and the northern lights danced every night. He spoke of laws he had tried to implement, protections for the weak, education for pack children, councils where every voice could be heard. "It sounds beautiful," Elena said one morning, watching him move through defensive stances, rebuilding muscle memory. Like a place where everyone mattered. It was the vision. Kieran completed a complex series of movements, his body flowing with recovered grace. Whether it would have worked in practice, I'll never know. My brother convinced them I was weak before I could finish building it. He was wrong. Was he? Kieran stopped, breathing hard but controlled. I couldn't even keep my own throne. Couldn't fight off a challenge from my younger brother. That doesn't exactly scream strength. You chose not to kill him, Elena said quietly. She had learned this in pieces over the week, the story emerging between bandage changes and shared meals. You had chances, could have ended the threat, but you wouldn't execute family, and that cost me everything. It cost you a throne built on fear. Elena stood, moving to him. But it kept your soul intact. There's strength in that. Kieran looked at her, really looked at her, his golden eyes intense in the early morning light. How do you do that? Do what? See the best in everything, in me, in situations that should make you bitter. You were rejected 3 weeks ago. Your mate threw you away like garbage. Your pack treats you as invisible. And yet you sit here telling me that mercy is strength and choosing compassion over cruelty matters." Elena was quiet for a moment, considering. "Because the alternative is becoming hard, becoming cruel, letting the rejection define me instead of refine me. And I refuse to let their judgment make me into someone I'm not." "You're remarkable. I'm surviving." She handed him the water skin she'd brought. "Same as you." "No." Kieran drank deeply, then set it aside. "I was just surviving, running, waiting to die somewhere far from home. But you? You're living, even in the margins, even when no one's watching. You're creating, caring, choosing kindness. That's not survival, that's defiance." Before Elena could respond, they heard it. Voices coming closer. Kieran's body tensed immediately, dropping into a defensive crouch. His eyes flashed gold, the alpha rising to the surface. "Hide," Elena whispered urgently. "Now." "I'm not leaving you. They're my packmates. They won't hurt me, but they'll kill you on sight. Please, trust me." Kieran hesitated for one agonizing second, then shifted. The massive black wolf melted into the shadows at the forest edge, disappearing so completely it was as if he had never been there. Elena barely had time to compose herself before 3 pack warriors emerged from the tree line. Marcus was leading them, her former mate. His face was the same combination of handsome and cold that she remembered, his eyes passing over her like she was furniture. "Elena." His voice was flat, unsurprised. "What are you doing out here?" "Gathering herbs." She held up the basket she always carried, showed him the medicinal plants she'd collected as cover. "The stores are low. I come out early to find the best specimens." Alone. One of the other warriors, a young male named Derek, looked suspicious. "That's against protocol." "I'm Omega," Elena said simply. "I'm not worth protecting. Or haven't you heard?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "Don't be dramatic. We're doing a perimeter check. There's been reports of a rogue alpha in the territory. Dangerous, wounded. Have you seen anything?" Every instinct screamed at Elena to lie, to protect Kieran. But she had never been good at deception. Her face showed too much. "I've seen tracks," she said carefully, which was true. She had seen Kieran's wolf prints. But nothing recent. Nothing in the last few days. "Show us." "They're old, probably washed away by the rain. I said show us." Marcus's voice carried alpha command, the power that had once made her wolf submit automatically. But her wolf was barely present anymore, the rejection bond having severed most of that instinctive obedience. Still, Elena moved, leading them away from where Kieran hid toward the northern edge of the territory where old tracks might actually exist. She showed them a game trail, pointed out disturbances in the undergrowth that could have been anything. The warriors spread out, searching, and Elena held her breath. "Nothing here," Derek finally announced. "If there was a rogue, he's long gone." "Keep looking." Marcus's eyes narrowed. Something doesn't feel right. They searched for another hour, moving through the waste heap area with weapons drawn. Elena stood frozen, praying that Kieran stayed hidden, that his scent was masked by the garbage and rain, that they wouldn't look too closely at the blanket she'd left or the medical supplies hastily concealed under brush. Finally, Marcus called off the search. "He's not here. We'll try the western boundary." They left without another word to Elena, without thanking her for her time or acknowledging her help. She was invisible to them again, useful only when they needed information. When their sense had faded completely, Kieran emerged from the shadows, still in wolf form, but his body language radiating fury. He shifted, and Elena saw the anger blazing in his eyes. "That was your mate?" "Former mate." Elena's hands were shaking from the adrenaline. "Yes." "He treated you like dirt, like you weren't even worth acknowledging." "I know." "And you protected me instead of turning me in. Do you understand what you risked? If he finds out you've been helping me..." "He won't find out." Elena met his eyes steadily. Because you're going to stay hidden, and I'm going to keep being invisible, and in a few days you'll be strong enough to leave. That's the plan. The plan is stupid. Kieran crossed to her, his movement still carrying traces of the predatory grace that marked alpha wolves. The plan puts you in danger for someone who means nothing to you. You're not nothing. The words came out fiercer than Elena intended. You're the only person in months who has looked at me like I'm human, like I'm worth something. So forgive me if I'm not eager to hand you over to warriors who will kill you without trial. Kieran stared at her, his expression shifting through anger to something else, something that made Elena's breath catch. Elena, don't! She held up a hand. Don't say whatever you're about to say. Don't make this more complicated than it already is. Just heal, get strong, and leave before they find you. That's all I'm asking. And what about you? His voice was rough. What happens to you when I'm gone? I go back to being invisible, same as always. That's not good enough. It's reality. Elena picked up her basket, needing to move, needing distance. I should go. They'll notice if I'm gone too long. Elena, wait! But she was already walking away, her heart pounding and her eyes stinging with tears she refused to let fall. Behind her, Kieran watched her go, his hands clenched into fists and his jaw tight with frustration. And somewhere in the shadows, a black wolf's eyes glowed gold with an emotion that looked dangerously like possessive fury. And now, I invite you to leave a trace of your presence in the comments. Tell us where in the world you're watching from, and the exact hour you hear this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel, and at what moments of the night they find you. Elena didn't return to the waste heap the next morning. She wanted to. Every instinct screamed at her to check on Kieran, to make sure he was safe, to bring him food, and continue the pattern they had established. But Marcus's search had rattled her. The pack was alert now, watching for threats, and any unusual behavior would be noticed and questioned. So she stayed in the pack house, cooked breakfast, served the warriors who didn't thank her, cleaned the kitchen until it gleamed, tried to ignore the hollow ache in her chest that had nothing to do with the severed mate bond and everything to do with a pair of golden eyes that had looked at her like she mattered. She lasted until evening. The pack gathered for dinner, filling the great hall with noise and laughter and the comfortable chaos of wolves who belonged. Elena served the meal she'd spent all afternoon preparing: roasted chicken with herbs, glazed vegetables, fresh bread that filled the air with yeast and warmth. She moved between tables like a ghost, refilling plates and cups, invisible to everyone except when they wanted something. Marcus sat at the high table with his new mate, a beautiful she-wolf named Kara, who was everything Elena wasn't: tall, lean, deadly. They fed each other bites of food between kisses, publicly displaying their bond, and Elena felt nothing. The rejection had killed whatever feelings she'd once had. Now there was only hollow acknowledgement that this had been her life, this emptiness. She was carrying dishes back to the kitchen when she heard it. A commotion outside, shouting, the sharp bark of command that meant warriors mobilizing. Elena set down the dishes and moved to the window. Torches, at least a dozen. Warriors assembling in the courtyard, and at their center, Marcus, his face set with grim determination. Confirmed sighting in the waste heap area, he was saying. The rogue is still there. We move now. Kill on sight. Elena's blood turned to ice. They had found Kieran, or found evidence of him, and they were going to kill him. She didn't think, didn't plan. She just moved. Out the back door, through the kitchen garden, into the forest at a dead run, her soft body protesting the sudden exertion, but her determination overriding every physical limitation. She had to get there first, had to warn him. The waste heap appeared through the trees, and Elena's heart sank. Kieran was there, in human form, gathering the few possessions he had, clearly preparing to leave. He looked up as she crashed into the clearing, his eyes widening. Elena, what? Run! She grabbed his arm, pulling. They're coming. Warriors. They know you're here. You have to run now. Kieran didn't argue, didn't ask questions. He shifted in a fluid motion, the massive black wolf appearing where the man had been, and together they ran. Through the forest, away from the pack territory, deeper into the wild lands where pack law didn't reach and rogues could disappear. Elena's lungs burned, her legs screamed, her body, built for endurance rather than speed, protested every step. But she didn't stop, couldn't stop. Behind them, she heard voices, torches, the sound of pursuit closing in. Kieran slowed, dropping back to run beside her instead of ahead. She could feel his frustration, his alpha instinct demanding he protect her, but he couldn't carry her in wolf form, and they both knew it. "Keep going," Elena gasped. "Don't wait for me." The wolf's response was a growl that clearly meant no. They burst into a clearing just as the moon broke through the clouds, full and silver and impossibly bright. And Elena felt it, a pulse, deep inside her chest, where her wolf had been silent for weeks. Her wolf stirred, waking, responding to something. Kieran shifted beside her, his human form manifesting with a flash of power. "Elena, listen to me. We can't outrun them with you in human form. You need to shift." "I can't." Her voice broke. "My wolf has been silent since the rejection. I can barely feel her." "Try." His hands gripped her shoulders. "Please, I can protect us both if you shift, but not like this." "Kieran, trust me." His golden eyes held hers. "Your wolf is there. I can feel her. She's just been quiet because she was grieving, but she's not gone. Call to her." Elena closed her eyes, reaching inside to that place where her wolf should be, and found her, curled tight, wounded, but not dead, waiting. The shift came easier than it had in months, fur replacing skin, paws instead of hands, the wolf form settling around her like coming home. She was smaller than Kieran in wolf form, her coat brown and soft, where his was black and sleek. But she was fast enough, strong enough. They ran together, two wolves moving through the forest as the moon watched overhead. The warriors' voices faded, the torches fell behind, and slowly, gradually, they left pack territory entirely, crossing into neutral lands where Marcus's authority held no weight. They ran until Elena's wolf couldn't take another step, until her paws were bleeding and her sides heaved with exhaustion. Then they collapsed together in a sheltered hollow beneath a massive oak tree, two wolves pressed against each other for warmth and comfort. Kieran shifted first, his arms coming around her wolf form, holding her steady. "Shift back," he said gently. "You're safe now. We made it." Elena shifted, the transformation leaving her human and naked and shaking against him. Kieran immediately shrugged out of the shirt he'd manifested with the shift and wrapped it around her shoulders. It was massive on her frame, covering her completely. "Are you hurt?" His hands moved over her, checking for injuries with professional efficiency. "No, just tired. I'm not built for running like that." "You kept up." There was pride in his voice, admiration. "You ran with an alpha and kept pace. That's not nothing." Elena laughed, breathless and slightly hysterical. "I just committed treason. I just helped a rogue escape. Warned him against my own pack. They'll exile me if they find out. Maybe worse." "I know." Kieran's arms tightened around her. "I know what you risked, what you gave up. For me. You would have done the same. Not the point." He pulled back enough to look at her, his golden eyes intense. "You chose me over your pack, over safety, over everything you've ever known. Why?" Elena met his gaze steadily. "Because they were going to kill you, and I couldn't let that happen." "But why? I'm nothing to you. A stranger you found dying in the garbage." "You're not nothing," her voice broke. "You're the person who looked at me like I mattered, who called me remarkable instead of worthless, who made me feel seen for the first time in my life. So no, I couldn't let them kill you, even if it meant losing everything else. Kieran stared at her, something profound shifting in his expression. Elena? And then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle, wasn't tentative. It was desperate and fierce and full of everything they hadn't said. His hands cradled her face like she was precious, like she was worth protecting, worth choosing. Elena kissed him back, her hands fisting in his hair, her body pressing against his, like she could anchor herself to this moment and never have to face what came next. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kieran pressed his forehead to hers. "I know you're not ready," he said quietly. "I know your rejection bond just broke. I know this is too fast and too complicated, and I should give you time, but I need you to know something." "What?" "I claim you." His voice was raw with emotion. "As my mate, my equal, my partner, if you'll have me. If you'll take a broken king who lost everything but found something infinitely more valuable in you." Elena's breath caught. "Kieran, you can't just—" "I can." His eyes held hers, golden and unwavering. "And I am. You gave up your pack for me, risked everything. And I won't dishonor that sacrifice by pretending I don't feel what I feel. I claim you, Elena, in front of the moon herself, if you'll accept." "I'm not what you think I am," Elena whispered. "I'm not remarkable or extraordinary. I'm just everything." He kissed her again, softer this time. "You're everything. And I'm going to spend however long it takes making you believe that." Elena looked into his eyes, saw the truth there, the absolute conviction, and felt something inside her shift. The broken place where the rejection bond had lived began to fill with something new, something warm and right and chosen rather than fated. "I accept," she whispered. "I claim you too, my broken king, my patient wolf, the man who saw me." The bond formed between them, different from the fated mate bond. This one was chosen, built on respect and trust and genuine affection. It settled into place with a rightness that made Elena's eyes sting with tears. Kieran held her close, his face buried in her hair. "We have to keep running," he said eventually. "My brother, your pack. They'll both be hunting us now." "I know. It won't be easy. We'll be rogues, outcasts. We'll have to build everything from nothing." "I know that too. And you're still willing?" Elena pulled back enough to look at him, at the man who had claimed her, not because fate demanded it, but because he chose to. "I've been nothing my whole life, been invisible, worthless, rejected for not fitting their mold. So yes, I'm willing to be a rogue with you. At least then I'll be a rogue who's chosen, who's valued, who matters." Kieran smiled, fierce and proud. "Then let's go. Let's find somewhere we can build a life, together." They stood hand in hand, two wolves against the world, and somewhere above, the moon watched with approval. They traveled north for 3 weeks, moving through territories that didn't belong to any pack, surviving on what they could hunt and forage and the skills they each brought to their partnership. Kieran was a skilled hunter and tracker, able to find game even in the sparse autumn forest. Elena, to his constant amazement, could make anything edible taste extraordinary. She collected wild herbs and roots, identifying plants that most wolves ignored, and turned rabbit and venison into meals that made Kieran close his eyes in appreciation. "How do you do that?" he asked one night, finishing a stew she'd made with nothing but foraged ingredients and a rabbit he'd caught. "Make food taste like this with basically nothing to work with?" "Practice, creativity, my mother's training." Elena cleaned their makeshift bowls with river water. "I told you, cooking is the one thing I'm good at." "Stop saying that." Kieran pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her from behind. "You're good at 100 things. You're just learning to see them." It was true. Away from the pack, away from constant judgment and the pressure to conform, Elena was blooming. She moved with more confidence, spoke with more authority. Her wolf, finally free from the weight of rejection, was growing stronger, more present. They made camp in abandoned dens and sheltered caves, building fires and creating temporary homes before moving on. Always moving, because both their pasts were hunting them. Marcus had sent trackers. Elena could smell them, following days behind but persistent, determined to bring back their former Omega and punish her for treason. And Kieran's brother. Kieran's brother was somewhere out there too, still hunting the king who had escaped execution. "We need to find somewhere permanent," Elena said one morning as they broke camp. "Somewhere we can actually defend if they find us." "I know." Kieran finished packing their limited supplies. "I've been thinking about that. There's a territory about a week north of here. No pack, abandoned settlement. It used to be a trading post before the packs consolidated. If it's still standing, we could fortify it, make a stand." "And if it's not standing? Then we keep running." They reached the settlement 6 days later, and Elena's breath caught. It wasn't abandoned, not entirely. The buildings were old, yes, some of them crumbling, but others had been maintained, repaired. And there were scents, multiple wolves, a small group, maybe a dozen individuals. Kieran tensed beside her, his hand moving to the knife at his belt. Rogues. Maybe. Elena stepped forward, her instincts saying something different. Or refugees, like us. They were surrounded before they could retreat. Wolves emerged from the buildings, all in human form, all armed but not attacking. Their leader stepped forward, an older male with gray in his hair and scars marking his face. "State your business," he said, his voice carrying authority despite his obvious age. "We're looking for sanctuary," Kieran said carefully. "We're running from pack law. Both of us. We need a place to rest, to rebuild." The old male's eyes narrowed, assessing. His gaze moved between them, reading body language, scenting the air. "You're bonded." "Yes." "She's Omega. You're Alpha." The statement was neutral, neither approval nor judgment. "Was Alpha," Kieran corrected. "I lost my throne. She was rejected by her pack. We're both outcasts now. And you think we'll just welcome you? Give you shelter? What makes you think we owe you anything?" Before Kieran could answer, Elena stepped forward. "Because we can contribute. I can cook, really cook. I can make supplies last twice as long with proper planning. I can heal. I know herbs and medicine. And Kieran can hunt, can track, can teach defense and strategy if you need it." The old male studied her, and something shifted in his expression. "You're offering to work for shelter?" "We're offering to be part of whatever you're building here," Elena said firmly, "if you'll have us." The man was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, and it transformed his scarred face. "My name is Thomas. I'm what passes for leadership in this settlement. We're all refugees here. All outcasts from packs that didn't want us or couldn't protect us. We don't have much, but what we have, we share, and we defend our own." "We can be part of that," Kieran said. "You'll pull your weight?" "Every day." Thomas extended his hand. "Then welcome, both of you. Though I should warn you, pack hunters come through here sometimes, looking for rogues. We've held them off so far, but it's only a matter of time before someone decides we're enough of a threat to eliminate." Kieran shook his hand, his grip firm. "Then we help you prepare. We fortify. We turn this settlement into something that can't be easily taken. You know how to do that? I was a king before I was a rogue. I know how to build defenses, how to train fighters, how to create something worth protecting." Thomas's smile widened. "Then you're exactly what we needed." The settlement, they learned, was called Haven. Ironic name for a place barely holding together, but accurate in what it represented. It was home to 15 wolves, all outcasts for various reasons. There was Maya, a young she-wolf who had been exiled for refusing an alpha's advances. Marcus, not Elena's former mate, but a grizzled warrior who had lost his pack to raiders. Sarah and her daughter Lily, running from an abusive mate. Johann, a massive male who had been deemed too violent and unstable, but was actually just traumatized. All of them broken in some way, all of them surviving together. Elena found her place almost immediately. Haven had food, barely, but no one who knew how to prepare it properly. She took over the communal kitchen, such as it was, and transformed their supplies. Deer meat that would have been tough and gamey became tender stews flavored with wild herbs. The last of their grain stores became bread that actually tasted like bread instead of dense, flavorless bricks. She taught the others to forage, showed them which plants were edible and nutritious, how to preserve food for winter. "This is incredible," Maya said one evening, practically inhaling the venison pie Elena had made. "I haven't eaten anything this good since leaving my pack." "It's just food," Elena said, but she was smiling. "It's hope," Thomas corrected from his seat by the fire. "It's proof that we can have good things even here. That being outcasts doesn't mean living like savages." Kieran, meanwhile, threw himself into fortifying the settlement. He assessed their defenses, found them laughably inadequate, and set about fixing that. He taught the younger wolves to fight, not with brute force, but with strategy. Showed them how to use the terrain, how to set traps, how to defend against larger numbers. "You were a warrior king," Marcus observed one day, watching Kieran drill a group in formation fighting. "Not just a politician." "My father believed kings should lead from the front," Kieran said. "I hated most of what he taught me, but that was worth keeping." He and Marcus rebuilt the settlement's walls, reinforcing weak points and creating choke points where defenders could hold against superior numbers. They dug trenches and set spike traps, built watchtowers from salvaged lumber. Haven began to look less like a collection of desperate refugees and more like a defensible community. And through it all, Elena and Kieran's bond deepened. They claimed a small cabin on the edge of the settlement, barely more than one room with a fireplace and a sleeping platform. But it was theirs, the first space that belonged to them rather than being borrowed or stolen or temporary. Elena made it a home, hung herbs to dry from the rafters, created a small garden plot outside where late autumn vegetables could grow, cooked meals that filled the cabin with warmth and the smell of bread and stew. Kieran made it safe, reinforced the walls and door, built shutters for the windows, created weapons caches hidden around the perimeter. And at night, they held each other, two people who had been broken by the world, learning what it meant to be whole together. "I never thought I could have this," Elena whispered one night, curled against his chest. "A home, a partner who chose me. People who value what I can do." "You always could have had it," Kieran murmured against her hair. "Your pack was just too stupid to see it. And your pack was too afraid of change to accept it." He tightened his arms around her. "But we're building something better here. Something where everyone matters. Where omegas aren't treated as worthless and alphas aren't required to be tyrants. You really think we can do it? Create a new kind of pack?" "I think we already are. Subscribe if you believe mercy can crown even the fallen." Winter came early and hard to Haven, blanketing the settlement in snow and ice that tested every improvement they had made. But they survived. More than survived. They thrived. Elena's food preservation techniques meant they had supplies when other settlements starved. Kieran's defenses kept out the worst of the predators and the occasional pack hunter who ventured too close. The community pulled together, everyone contributing what they could, supporting each other through the hardest months. New refugees arrived throughout the winter, a family fleeing a tyrannical alpha, two young wolves who had bonded across pack lines and been exiled for it, an elderly healer whose pack had deemed her too old to be useful. Haven grew to 25 wolves by midwinter, then 30, then 40. And with growth came attention. Marcus's trackers found them in the 3rd month of winter. 4 warriors, armed and dangerous, demanding Elena's return. Thomas met them at the settlement's gates, flanked by Kieran and Marcus. Elena stood behind them, her heart pounding but her chin lifted. "She's not going back," Thomas said flatly. "She's pack property," the lead tracker insisted. "She committed treason. She needs to face judgment." "She's Haven property now," Kieran said, his voice cold. "She's my mate, my partner. And she's under our protection. You're a rogue. You have no authority. I have the authority of every wolf in this settlement who will fight to protect her." Kieran stepped forward, his alpha presence radiating despite his exile. "And I promise you, there are more of us than there are of you." The tracker looked past them, saw the 40 wolves assembled behind their leaders, all armed, all standing ready. His confidence wavered. "Marcus won't let this go," he said. "You're harboring a traitor." "We're protecting family," Thomas corrected. "And if Marcus has a problem with that, he's welcome to come discuss it himself. But he should bring more than 4 warriors." The trackers left, threats trailing behind them like smoke. But they left. Elena released the breath she'd been holding, her body shaking with relief and residual fear. Kieran's arm came around her immediately, steady and grounding. "They'll be back," she said quietly. "I know." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "But they'll find us ready." They prepared for war throughout the rest of winter. Kieran intensified training. Marcus and the other warriors drilled constantly. They stockpiled weapons and supplies, reinforced every weak point in the settlement's defenses. Elena worked alongside the other women, and some of the men who were better suited to support roles, creating emergency medical stations and food caches. She taught everyone basic healing, basic survival skills, basic ways to contribute, even if they couldn't fight. "You're building an army," Thomas observed one evening, watching Kieran put a group through combat drills. "I'm building a community that can defend itself," Kieran corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there? You're teaching them military tactics, organization, discipline. I'm teaching them to survive, to protect what they've built. That's not the same as conquering." Thomas smiled. "Your father would have built an army to attack, to expand, to dominate. You're building one to defend, to protect. That's the difference between a tyrant and a king." "I'm not a king anymore. Aren't you?" Thomas gestured to the settlement, to the wolves training and working and building. "They follow you, listen to you, look to you for guidance. What is that, if not kingship?" Kieran was quiet for a long moment. "It's different here. I don't rule them. I serve them. That's what a true king does." Spring came with the thaw, and with it, the attack. Not from Elena's pack, from Kieran's brother. They came at dawn, 50 warriors in full armor, led by a man who looked like Kieran's dark reflection. Lucian, the brother who had taken the throne through betrayal and blood. Haven's watchtowers spotted them early enough for everyone to reach defensive positions. Kieran stood at the main gates with Thomas and Marcus, while Elena coordinated the non-combatants in the protected center of the settlement. "Brother," Lucian called across the open ground, "I've been hunting you for 6 months. Imagine my surprise to find you've built yourself a little kingdom of outcasts and failures." "What do you want, Lucian?" Kieran's voice was steady despite the fear Elena could feel through their bond. "Your head, obviously. Can't have a rival alpha wandering around claiming to be the rightful king. Bad for morale." "I don't claim anything. I renounced the throne when you took it. And yet here you stand, leading wolves, building defenses, playing king with refugees." Lucian smiled, cold and cruel. "So either you're lying about renouncing your claim, or you're too stupid to learn your lesson. Either way, you die today." "You'll have to come through all of us to get to him," Thomas said. Lucian laughed. You think your little settlement of broken wolves can stand against trained warriors? Against an alpha army? You're delusional, old man. Maybe. Thomas's hand moved to his weapon. But we're going to try anyway, because that's what family does. The battle began with arrows from Haven's watchtowers, forcing Lucian's forces to advance under fire. They crashed against the settlement's walls like a violent tide, but the defenses held. The choke points Kieran had designed worked exactly as intended, funneling attackers into kill zones where Haven's defenders had every advantage. But Lucian had numbers, and training, and the brutal efficiency of wolves raised for war. The fighting was fierce and bloody. Haven's defenders fought with desperate courage, protecting their home and each other. But slowly, inevitably, they were being pushed back. Elena watched from her position, coordinating the wounded and the supplies, her heart in her throat. She could feel Kieran fighting at the gates, could feel his determination and his fear through their bond. And then she felt it. The pull, the same sensation she'd had that night in the waste heap when she'd first saved him. Her wolf stirred, and with it, something else. Something she'd inherited from her mother's line, but never understood. Never accessed. Power. Ancient and lunar and vast. Elena closed her eyes and reached for it, not knowing what she was doing but trusting instinct. And suddenly she could see them, the threads, the connections between every wolf on the battlefield. She could see Lucian's warriors, most of them fighting out of fear rather than loyalty. Could see the bonds holding them to their alpha, bonds built on dominance and terror rather than choice. And she could see something else, a weakness. A crack in Lucian's authority that had been growing since he took the throne through betrayal. Elena opened her eyes, made a decision that terrified her, and ran toward the battle. "Elena, no!" Kieran saw her coming, tried to intercept, but she was already past him. She walked through the fighting, wolves parting around her instinctively, and stopped directly in front of Lucian. "I challenge you," she said, her voice carrying power she didn't know she possessed. "For leadership of this battle, for the loyalty of your wolves, I challenge your right to command them." Lucian stared at her, then laughed. "You? You're Omega. You're nothing. You can't challenge an Alpha." "I'm a Luna," Elena said, and as she spoke the words, she felt them become true, felt the power settle into place. "Mate to your brother, the rightful king, and I invoke ancient law, trial by revelation. Let your warriors see what you truly are. Let them choose." She touched the threads, gentle but insistent, and showed them. Showed Lucian's warriors the truth of how he'd taken power, the poison, the lies, the warriors he'd sacrificed to eliminate his brother, the cruelty he'd hidden behind authority. One by one, Lucian's warriors lowered their weapons. Some fell to their knees. Others simply backed away, their faces showing horror and betrayal. "No!" Lucian snarled. "I am your Alpha. I command you to fight." "You're a traitor," one of his captains said quietly. "You betrayed your brother, your king, everything we swore to protect. I gave you strength. I made you powerful." "You made us weapons," another warrior said, "and we're tired of bleeding for your ambition." Lucian looked around at his crumbling army, at the wolves who were refusing to fight, and his face twisted with rage. He shifted, the massive wolf form manifesting with a flash of power, and lunged directly at Elena. Kieran intercepted him mid-air, two wolves colliding with bone-crushing force. They fought with savage intensity, alpha against alpha, brother against brother, and the assembled wolves formed a circle around them, watching in silence. It was brutal, vicious, both wolves fighting with everything they had, fur and blood flying. But Kieran was fighting for something Lucian couldn't understand, not just survival, not just victory. He was fighting for Elena, for Haven, for every wolf who had been cast aside and told they were worthless, for the belief that mercy and strength could coexist, and that made all the difference. Kieran pinned Lucian, his jaws at his brother's throat, and the fighting stopped. Yield, Kieran growled. Lucien struggled, but he was beaten, and he knew it. Slowly, grudgingly, he bared his throat in submission. Kieran held him there for a long moment, then released him and shifted back to human form. Go, he said quietly. Take whoever still follows you and go. And if I ever see you near my family again, I won't be merciful a second time. Lucien shifted back, his face twisted with humiliation and rage. But he was beaten. He gathered the handful of warriors who still showed him loyalty, less than a dozen out of 50, and left. The remaining warriors knelt before Kieran, not out of defeat, out of choice. We followed the wrong brother, their captain said. If you'll have us, we'd like to serve the right one. Kieran looked at them, at the wolves who had been taught to value strength over mercy, conquest over compassion. Then he looked at Elena, at Haven, at everything they had built together. You can stay, he said, but not as warriors serving a king, as members of a community, as equals. If you can accept that, you're welcome here. One by one they accepted. Haven doubled in size overnight, and the work of integrating two very different groups of wolves began in earnest. Kieran's former warriors were disciplined, skilled, but rigid in their thinking. Haven's original refugees were creative, compassionate, but lacking in formal training. Bringing them together required patience, understanding, and a willingness to learn from each other. Elena became the bridge between them. She organized communal meals where everyone contributed and everyone ate together. She taught the warriors her healing skills, showing them that strength could mean protecting rather than destroying. She learned combat techniques from them, proving that Omegas could defend themselves if given proper training. You're becoming a leader, Maya told her one evening, watching Elena mediate a dispute between two groups. A real Luna. I'm just trying to help everyone get along. That's what leadership is. Not commanding, connecting. Kieran rebuilt his kingdom, but differently this time. He didn't rule from a throne. He sat in councils where every voice mattered. He made decisions collaboratively, valuing wisdom over rank. He created laws that protected the weak without diminishing the strong. And slowly, word spread. About the settlement where outcasts became family. Where Omegas were valued and Alphas served rather than dominated. Where a rejected she-wolf and an exiled king had built something new. More refugees arrived. Some from Elena's old pack, fleeing Marcus's increasingly authoritarian rule. Some from Lucian's former territory, seeking the mercy they'd been denied. Some from distant packs who had heard the stories and wanted to be part of something different. Haven grew into a town, then a territory, then something that looked dangerously like a new pack. We need to make it official, Thomas said one spring evening, 6 months after Lucian's defeat. Declare ourselves a pack, establish formal boundaries, or someone's going to decide we're a threat and eliminate us while we're still unprotected by pack law. Making it official means choosing an alpha, Marcus pointed out. And there's only one wolf here with the strength and the lineage to hold that position. All eyes turned to Kieran. He looked at Elena, silent questions passing between them through the bond. What do you think? He asked her quietly. I think you've been an alpha king all along, Elena said. You just forgot that kingship is about service, not power, and Haven has reminded you. Will you stand beside me? As Luna? As my equal in truth? Not just name? Elena thought about the girl she'd been a year ago, rejected, invisible, convinced she was worthless, and looked at who she'd become, a healer, a leader. A woman who had saved a dying king and helped him remember why mercy mattered. Yes, she said, I'll stand beside you, but not behind you. Never behind you. Kieran smiled, fierce and proud. I wouldn't have it any other way. The pack formation ceremony happened on the full moon, with every wolf in Haven assembled. Kieran and Elena stood at the center, hands joined. as Thomas performed the ancient rites. "Do you swear to lead with wisdom and strength?" Thomas asked Kieran. "I swear to serve with wisdom and strength," Kieran corrected. "To protect rather than dominate, to value rather than command." Thomas smiled and turned to Elena. "Do you swear to guide with compassion and courage?" "I swear to heal with compassion and courage," Elena said. "To see worth in every wolf, to make sure no one is invisible." "Then I name you Alpha and Luna of Haven Pack," Thomas declared. "May the moon bless your leadership. May your pack prosper under your care." The assembled wolves howled their approval, and the bond formed. Not like traditional packs, built on dominance hierarchy, but something new, built on mutual respect and chosen loyalty. Haven became official, recognized by neighboring packs, protected by pack law, and at its heart stood two wolves who had been rejected by the world and had chosen each other instead. 2 years after Elena found a dying wolf in the waste heap, she stood on the balcony of Haven's council hall, watching the territory she and Kieran had built together. The settlement had grown into a proper town. Sturdy buildings, cultivated fields, a marketplace where wolves traded goods and services, a school where pups learned not just how to fight, but how to think, how to create, how to contribute to community. Children played in the streets, a mix of every rank, every background, every body type, including several who were soft and round like Elena had been, who were valued for their minds and hearts rather than judged for their appearance. "What are you thinking about?" Kieran's arms came around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "That I was ready to die 2 years ago. That I thought my life was over when Marcus rejected me. And now—" She gestured to the thriving territory below. "Now I have this. Have you. Have a family that chose me." "We have each other," Kieran corrected, "and we built this together. You built most of it. I built walls and defenses. You built community, built hope, built a place where wolves like us, the broken ones, the rejected ones, the ones told they weren't good enough, could become whole." Elena leaned back against him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence, the steady beat of his heart against her back. "Do you ever regret it? Losing your original kingdom? Everything you had before?" "Never." His arms tightened around her. "That kingdom was built on fear and dominance. This one is built on choice and compassion. And I get to rule it with you beside me, not behind me, not serving me, but as my equal in every way that matters. Why would I regret that? Because you gave up so much. I gave up nothing that mattered, and I gained everything." He turned her to face him, his golden eyes intense. "You saved me, Elena, not just that night in the waste heap, every day since. You showed me what real strength looks like, what true leadership means. You made me into the king I always wanted to be but didn't know how to become." "You made me believe I was worth something," Elena whispered, "when everyone else said I wasn't. You looked at me and saw value, saw potential, and you gave me the space to become who I was meant to be. We saved each other." "Yes." She kissed him, soft and sweet. "We did." Below them, Haven Pack continued its evening routines. Wolves of every type, every background, every body shape and size, working together, supporting each other, building something that had never existed before, a pack where everyone mattered, where omegas led beside alphas, where strength meant protecting the vulnerable, not exploiting them, where rejection wasn't the end of your story, but the beginning of something better. Maya approached the balcony, her face apologetic. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's a delegation at the gates, 3 wolves from Thornridge Pack. They're asking for sanctuary." Elena's breath caught. Thornridge, her old pack. "Do we know why?" Kieran asked. "They said Marcus has become increasingly unstable, paranoid. He's been exiling or imprisoning anyone who questions his authority. These 3 are the latest casualties. Elena looked at Kieran, saw the question in his eyes. "We take them in," she said firmly. "We show them what they should have been building all along." "Even after what your pack did to you?" "Especially after that." Elena smiled, and it was fierce and bright. "Because we're not them. We don't cast people aside for failing to meet arbitrary standards. We see worth in everyone, and we prove it, every day. With every wolf we welcome home." Kieran kissed her forehead. "Have I mentioned that you're extraordinary?" "You might have said something like that once or twice." "Well, it bears repeating." They descended together to welcome the new refugees, 2 leaders walking side by side, equal in authority and partnership. And as they reached the gates, as they opened the doors to 3 more broken wolves seeking sanctuary, Elena thought about the girl she'd been, the one who had cried beneath the full moon, convinced she was worthless, ready to give up. That girl had saved a dying wolf out of compassion, and that wolf had claimed her, had built a kingdom with her, had shown her that rejection wasn't failure, it was freedom. Freedom to become something better than what others expected. Freedom to build something new. They welcomed the refugees inside, offered them food and shelter, and the promise of a place where they would be valued for who they were, not what they looked like or how well they conformed. And somewhere above, the moon watched with approval as a rejected Omega and an exiled king proved once again that the greatest strength was choosing compassion over cruelty. That mercy could build kingdoms. That love, real love, chosen love, could heal anything. Even broken wolves who had been told they would never be enough. If your heart beat alongside ours, like, comment, and subscribe. Because every soul that joins our moon keeps the flame of redemption alive.